It's a question that has puzzled humans for centuries. It's a question that has been asked by philosophers, poets, and thinkers for centuries. It's a question that has no easy answer, yet we continue to seek it out. We'll explore what makes us who we are, and how nostalgia reminds us of who we once were but will never be again. Who am I? We live in a world that constantly tells us who we should be. Our jobs, our relationships, and even our social media profiles all contribute to the image we project to the world. For many of us, our body is not the primary source of our sense of self. But it's worth noting that the body is a complex organism that is constantly changing. Every 10 years, our cells are replaced anew, and our appearance changes as well. So if we identify ourselves with the consistency of our body, we may find that our body is never really physically the same anyway. If we can't look at our physical body for answers, perhaps we have to look inwards. Neuroscience. The mind-brain identity theory, also known as the identity theory of mind or identity thesis, was proposed by philosopher U.T. Place in the 1950s. According to this theory, mental states and processes are identical to physical states and processes in the brain. This means that mental events, such as thoughts, perceptions, and emotions, can be reduced to and explained by neurobiological events in the brain. Place's theory challenged the traditional dualist view, which held that the mind and body were separate entities. The mind-brain identity theory has since been refined and developed by other philosophers and scientists, and continues to be a topic of debate and discussion in the fields of philosophy of mind and cognitive science.
Here's what we know for certain, is that somehow mind is irreversibly tied into the brain. And of course, the reason we know that is if you were to damage your finger in a car accident, you wouldn't really be any different. You'd be sad about it. But if you were to damage an equivalently sized chunk of neural tissue, that can change your mind entirely. It can change your personality or your decision making, your risk aversion. The question is, how? Does it all come down to materialism? Does it all come down to just the physical pieces and parts of the brain? Or is there something else?
Somehow, our mind is integrally dependent on the brain tissue that needs to be in place to have mind. As far as we can tell, whether this is all that's required, or whether there's something else that our science is too young to understand, that's the open question. Memory. Perhaps the most fundamental thing that makes us feel like the same person across our lifetime is our memory. Well, our memories are the threads that tie together our past, present, and future selves, and without them, we may feel like a completely different person. So when we strip away the noise of the world, when we are left alone with our thoughts, who are we? The self. William James in 1890 distinguished two understandings of the self, which have recently regained popularity in cognitive science. The two understandings are the self as me and the self as I. According to James, me corresponds to the self as an object of experience, self as object, while I reflects the self as a subject of experience, self as subject. This distinction is important in the context of consciousness and the self, and has been the subject of experimental studies on the underpinnings of the phenomenal self. In this way, James' distinction between the self as me and I has been influential in shaping contemporary discussions in cognitive science and philosophy of mind.
That the self is an illusion, the sense of being an ego, an I, a thinker of thoughts in addition to the thoughts, an experiencer in addition to the experience, that the sense that we all have of riding around inside our heads as a kind of a passenger in the vehicle of the body. That's where most people start when they think about any of these questions. Most people don't feel identical to their bodies. They feel like they have bodies. They feel like they're inside the body, and most people feel like they're inside their heads. Now that sense of being a subject, a locus of consciousness inside the head, is an illusion. That is, it makes no neuroanatomical sense. There's no place in the brain for your ego to be hiding. We know that everything you experience, your conscious emotions and thoughts and moods and the impulses that initiate behavior, all of these things are by myriad different processes in the brain that are spread out over the whole of the brain.
The fundamentals of William James' concept of the self is a great platform to build on. But if we're not the self or the ego as stated by neuroscientist Sam Harris, then who are we? Somehow I find myself back in India for answers. Sri Ramana Maharshi was a spiritual teacher and sage who lived in India from 1879 to 1950. He is considered one of the most important figures of the Advaita Vedanta tradition, which emphasizes the non-dual nature of reality and the oneness of the self and the universe. One of the most well-known teachings of Sri Ramana Maharshi is the Who Am I method of self-inquiry. This method involves asking oneself the question, who am I, and then using this question as a tool to investigate the nature of the self. According to Sri Ramana Maharshi, the true nature of the self is not the individual ego, but rather a deeper, more fundamental consciousness that underlies all experience. By asking who am I, and turning one's attention inward, it is possible to become aware of this deeper consciousness and to realize one's true identity as the infinite, unchanging self. The Who Am I method of self-inquiry is a powerful tool for spiritual awakening and has been practiced by countless seekers of truth over the years. While it can be challenging at first to quiet the mind and turn inward, with practice and persistence it is possible to experience the profound peace and liberation that comes with realizing one's true nature. Self-inquiry. The exercise involves sitting quietly and asking, who am I? The individual then places the thought of I in the middle of their head and acknowledges that they are not their body, organs, or senses. They observe their hearing, seeing, smelling, tasting, and feeling from the perspective of the I thought. They then acknowledge that they are not their thoughts and continue to go deeper until they go behind their senses and thinking mind, reaching a state known as satori or samadhi. We have covered samadhi on our past video. In this state, they become synonymous with a very fine energy that is an identity with consciousness, which is the universe. Am I the brain? The mind, the self, the ego, or spirit? What am I? Well, whether we find solace in religion or comfort in science, the search for self is a journey that never truly ends, but perhaps that's the beauty of it. We are always changing, always growing, always becoming something new. And that, in itself, is a beautiful thing. Thank you for watching. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe on this video. Help us on the road to reaching 1,000 subscribers. as it will help us to be able to make consistent and great content like this.